Welcome to the deep dive. So, if I played you a track of like a smoky late night jazz session from a Manhattan loft in 1963, you probably expect to hear the upright bass, some clinking glasses.
Right, the distant subway rumble, yeah.
Exactly. But it's wild because what if I told you nobody actually played those instruments and, well, that room never even existed?
It's a bit mind-bending, honestly. So the sources we're looking at today detail this really fascinating musical project called Manhattan Indigo Skyline Dialect.
Right.
And we are focusing specifically on a segment they call the closing set, which spans from exactly 2.45 to 3.46 a.m.
Which is such a weirdly specific time frame, and that is basically our mission today. We are unpacking how creators are using these incredibly specific text-to-music prompts to, I guess, resurrect the exact musical and atmospheric ghosts of that 1960s avant-garde jazz scene.
Yeah, and the foundation of these prompts is focused entirely on replicating 1960s modal jazz. They really want to evoke those exploratory, sort of spiritual sounds of giants like John Coltrane and Ornette Coleman.
Okay, so how do they actually get that sound?
Well, the prompts demand a very strict quintet setup. So you have a tenor saxophone taking the lead, an upright bass, a loose ride cymbal, and then just some sparse piano comping.
And by comping, you mean like just those rhythmic supporting chords in the background, right?
Yes, exactly.
Because modal jazz itself relies on fewer chord changes, giving musicians more room to improvise. So by keeping the instrumentation tight, it forces the AI to focus on the interplay between the musicians, rather than hiding behind, a massive, muddy wall of sound.
Right, but just giving an AI a list of instruments isn't enough to capture the vibe. The sources describe the music stretching outward and upward like a city skyline under construction.
Oh, wow. That is such a beautiful visual.
It really is. And they also instruct the rhythms to be fluid and exploratory rather than strictly swinging.
But wait, how does a text prompt actually translate that architectural imagery into musical directions? Like, if you type fluid and exploratory, how does the AI know what to do with the timing?
It really comes down to how these AI models are trained. I mean, they analyze millions of hours of audio that are tagged with emotional and stylistic metadata.
Right, okay.
So when the system sees fluid, it pulls from data sets where human musicians are bending the tempo, responding to each other, playing off the grid. It mathematically recreates the feeling of musicians conversing rather than just marching to a beat.
That is insane. But catching the notes alone is really only half the battle, right? Because if you put a simulated Coltrane in a sterile recording booth, it doesn't sound like 1963. You have to, engineer the room itself.
Yes, and this is where the prompts get incredibly granular. They demand intimate room acoustics and raw analog tape saturation.
Oh, tape saturation. That's what gives old recordings that subtle, warm fuzziness, right?
Exactly.
Just that slight distortion from pushing the physical tape to its limits.
Yeah, and the prompt even specifies the emotional restlessness of 2.45 a.m., along with the literal sounds of glasses and bottles clinking.
Yeah.
Because the AI was trained on late-night audio samples, typing 2.45 a.m. acts as a trigger for slower tempos, lower frequencies, and a sparser arrangement.
Okay, but a 1960s jazz club isn't just one static mood for an entire hour. How does the prompt handle the shifting energy?
Well, the sources detail how creators manage this by branching out into three distinct sonic add-ons.
Okay.
First, there's a gritty NYC street energy approach. This actively pulls in distant taxi horns, subway rumbles, and pairs them with hard-edged improvisation.
Got it. What's the second one?
Then they pivot to a spiritual or meditative vibe, which creates this Coltrane cathedral feeling of, secret urban solitude.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
And finally, when they want to push boundaries, there's an avant-garde prompt that triggers dissonant harmonies and totally unpredictable rhythms.
Okay, I do have to push back on this whole concept a little bit, though. By explicitly requesting field recordings, crowd ambiance, and literal subway rumbles, does this cross the line from a musical album into a theatrical audio play?
That is a very fair point.
We are essentially sound designing a movie scene.
It blurs the line, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the sources show the creators arguing that in 1963, the environment was an active band member. They aren't just generating a song, they're curating a memory of a specific time and place.
I hear that, but a memory is supposed to be something you actually lived. When you fake the clinking glasses and the subway train rolling by, it feels a bit like, I don't know, cheating the listener's emotional response. You're artificially triggering nostalgia for a moment that literally never happened.
And that tension is exactly why this project is so fascinating to analyze. It forces us to ask whether the emotional resonance of the music comes from the literal truth of the recording or just the acoustic reality of what we're hearing through the speakers.
Right.
I mean, if you feel the chill of a late night New York street, does it really matter if a computer calculated the wind?
So for you listening, if you've ever wanted to instantly teleport into the intellectual tension and smoky atmosphere of a late-night downtown Manhattan loft, understanding the anatomy of these pumps shows you exactly how that mood is engineered.
It strips away the magic just a bit, but it leaves behind a highly precise recipe of instrumentation, metadata, and engineered ambiance.
Which leaves us with this final thought for you to chew on. If a text prompt can flawlessly conjure the raw, authentic, and supposedly spontaneous improvisational energy of a 1963 jam session, what does the word live actually mean anymore?